Run it. I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, I can't take no loss. Yeah, I don't even know what it costs. Yeah, I hit the ground.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Rico, Randall, your host of Dem Tech Folks podcast. And with me is Mr. Roger Campbell. So Roger's going to go back into his background after he introduced himself. And he's going to tell you how he got into tech and how he's progressed to his current status.
Yeah, how's it going, Roger? So my name is Reginald Davis. I go by Reginald a lot because a lot of times we have a couple of people I work with called Reggie. It's not because I'm trying to be proper or nothing, right? Reginald.
It's like, man, he's so bougie. What?
I know, right?
Man.
That's what people think. But honestly, it's really a situation where I do have two other people that I work with that are named Reggie as well. One guy, his name is actually Reggie on his birth certificate. Mine is Reginald. So
Roger, with that, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself and jump to it.
All right. Rico, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and speak first and foremost. Thank you. And I appreciate what you're doing here.
No doubt.
So Roger Campbell II, originally from Philadelphia, I guess you could say. I was born there, but we lived in Jersey. Born over at Temple University. We lived across the bridge over in Jersey. We were there for a while and then moved to Florida. That's pretty much where I grew up, South Florida, right outside of Fort Lauderdale, a little town called Coral Springs. And grew up there, but I've lived all over since then. 18, we moved to Maryland in the middle of high school. So know the DMV very well. Graduated high school there. Went back to Philly for my first year of college and studied photography, but have always been on a computer. My parents got me my first computer at a very young age. So it's like when people ask when did you get into tech, I don't really know because I was always tinkering, building computers, messing with them and things like that. Through my 20s, as I was trying to figure myself out, I went to college for a year. Didn't really work for me. Tried a couple other different programs that didn't really work. But I was always code adjacent to a lot of food and beverage. But then I started running my own business around 24, where I got a job in like as a general IT help desk for a company based out of Miami. And I got laid off, but it was a sales shop. So a lot of the sales guys went and started their own shops. They were calling me Roger. So I was in Miami. I was working at a IT shop and got laid off there. And when I got laid off, a lot of the sales guys started their own shops. So I had a lot of people reach out and wanted to see if I could help with phone systems, CRM systems, the general help desk type of things that go on in an office. And then as I was working with like a lot of CRM integrations with phones and computers, I started to get questions about how to do like custom integrations and APIs and all these kinds of things. And around 26, 27, I realized this is something I probably should look a little bit deeper at. Because it's kind of limiting my business. I'm paying more on contractors for development work than I'm paying myself off a contract. So I took a step back and ended up going through, I was living in North Carolina at the time. Moved out of North Carolina, took a job on a cruise ship in Hawaii for 9 months actually, to save up some money. Went home to DC, moved in with my mom at 27 and started to go to school again. I went to the Prince George Community College out in Largo, Maryland, and did a certificate in web development and finished that up and realized like this is not enough for me to get a job. So I ended up going to General Assembly, which is a coding boot camp out of DC. They have all over locations. Graduated the boot camp, got my first job as a integration engineer for a healthcare company that stores healthcare data. Moved over to QA after about 3 months in that position. Worked in 9 months as a QA engineer and really wanted to get my hands dirty with some code and started looking for work. Hit a bit of a brick wall because I was QA and everybody wanted to hire me for QA and nobody wanted to hire me as an engineer.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up call from a buddy at General Assembly. He was like, Roger, you did really great while you were here. Well, he wasn't a buddy at the time, but he was the instructor manager. And he was like, Roger, while you're here, I saw you at night working with other students, helping out. We have this part-time teaching assistant position open. Would you be interested in giving it a shot? So I said, sure. It was a couple nights a week coming back to the school, helping out other students who were in the program. And that ended up turning into a full-time instructor's position. Wow. So I fell into ed tech from that point. I kind of looked at the technology education space as a way for me to I couldn't really find a job developing at that point in time because people didn't think I had the skill set for it. So I'm like, if I teach people how to code, that should be a really good way for me to move
Get
into
into it.
engineering myself.
I find your path pretty interesting, at least from what I've heard. The cruise ship thing is a trip.
Oh, and the story behind that, I don't know how deep you want to go, but the story of why.
Is it that good? Hold on, man. Let's go ahead and go back to that then. Let's do that. Let's talk about that.
It was nothing bad. It was nothing bad. But I was in a relationship, and
Okay.
it was a situation where it was like we were good together, but it just wasn't good for both of us to continue.
Yeah.
She was a little bit older than me at the time. I was younger, and we had been off and on for a lot of years, long and short. And it was like I needed to get far enough that I wouldn't go back, or she wouldn't come to me. Type of
That good, huh? Wow.
Yeah, so I took the job. My brother had been working on a cruise ship out in Hawaii for like 4 or 5 years at that point. He was like, "Raj, just come out here. It's a ball. You'll have a good time." I was one and done. I did one contract. I never need to go on another cruise ship in my life.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
What was so bad about it?
Well, it was 9 months.
9 months.
I did a 9-month contract on the cruise ship, but my hat goes off to anybody. Pride of America, my Ohana out there. I love all y'all. If y'all still on the ship, like keep doing your thing. But
So,
go ahead.
no, I was going to tell you, like, I go on, we do a good amount of family cruises. And after a week, I'm about ready to get off the ship. So 9 months, I know you were like, bruh.
I mean, so I've never slept better than out at sea. Like, I love being on the sea. And it might also been the amount of hours we worked. I mean, in 2 weeks, we worked anywhere between 130 and 150 hours in 2 weeks.
Wow.
You work 7 days a week, no days off. At most, you get a Thursday night off every 5 weeks. So I was a waiter on the ship, and I was a volunteer firefighter because everybody on the ship has a safety duty. So I was also trained as a maritime firefighter. So I would have to run drill every Tuesday, and then we had practice once to twice a week where we're running stairs in like full gear, going down into like the depths of the ship to learn how to put out fires down there and stuff like that. So you normally work.
So
with
the funny.
Go ahead.
I'm about to say, the funny thing about it, I was going to ask you this, but you answered the question because my son did a behind the scenes tour, and the IT and technology on ships are impressive.
It's insane.
Yes, I mean the IT, the systems on these cruise ships are out of this world.
Really?
And I was going to ask you, did you do any kind of like IT work on the ship? But it sounds like you did.
Fortunately, not. Those are covenant positions. Those are covenant positions. Yeah, I wish, because I mean, everything from we use biometric scans for clock in, clock out to like instrumental, like maritime instruments for the crew or the crew on the bridge, and just all over the place. It's just all kinds of stuff.
Well, I was just talking about the Wi-Fi hotspots, but we can talk about that stuff too. I'm just
I mean, even from like the Wi-Fi to like it was crazy. It was the greatest experience that I never have to repeat again. I had, like,
those are the best ones, bro.
Worked the hardest in my life. It was wild. And then I was so when I was in Hawaii, not a lot of people remember it because they kind of kept it under wraps, but I was in Oahu outside Honolulu, on the island where Honolulu is, when the fake missile crisis happened in Hawaii. So one morning we're all clearing out the ship because we turned the ship over on Saturdays. We turned the ship off. Now you get those Amber Alerts. Everybody on the ship's phone goes off with an Amber Alert saying, "Incoming missile to Hawaii. This is not a drill. Take cover."
People were probably going nuts, right?
Lost their mind. So it was just a lot of stuff happened. Just a whole lot of stuff happened on the ship. It was really cool. A lot of work. I never need to do it again. But it taught me the value of working hard and like how much time you could have in a day. Because like you normally work 3 shifts a day. It's like a 3-hour shift in the morning from like 6 to 9, a 3-hour shift over lunch, and then a 5 to 6 hour shift at night for dinner. So you saying go ahead.
I was going to say, so you saying that carries over to your career now, that work ethic?
Yeah, pretty much. Like we had a joke between shifts. It's like you can either get off the ship, eat, or sleep, or do all three. So like I would learn how to like get off the ship. We'd have like 2 hours between shifts. Get off the ship, go have a good meal, go to the beach and swim, take a quick nap on the beach, run back to the ship, shower, change, and be ready to work in like 2.5 to 3 hours.
Dang, like that's really a lot, bro.
Yeah, and just like really learn the value of my time and like my effort and like what. Like I learned like if I could do that, if I could work that hard for someone else, I could work that hard for myself and do whatever I wanted to do. And really took that
Dang.
mentality when I got off the ship. It was funny enough, when I got off the ship after 9 months, I remember I was trying to figure out what to do. And my mom, I was talking to my mom one day and I was like, Ma, I'm trying to figure out, should I come back to Maryland where you are? Should I go back? My father was in Florida. Should I maybe try to go back to the Carolinas where I used to live because it's cheaper? And I'll never forget it. My mother told me, Roger, you should come home. You need to figure out what you're doing with yourself and your career and take the help while you have it. Because you're getting to an age where there's only so much time that you can keep asking people to help you get to the next step.
So you were just stringing it along. He was like,
to an extent. I mean, with my ex, we had a house. I was basically married, helped raise her kids, and was already in a certain type of lifestyle before, but I was working in restaurants, trying to run a small IT business here and there where I could. I hadn't landed in a career yet in my entire life by 27. And, 30's creeping up. I was with somebody who I really thought I might potentially want to get married to. I'm trying to figure out, how do you buy a ring? How do you buy a house? You don't want to rent. And it's like, getting off that cruise ship, I had a little bit of cash because, you have no bills while you're on the ship, as long as you're smart about making sure you don't have anything back on the mainland. Like 3 meals a day, room and board. But it's like, that doesn't last forever. My mom was like, you need to come home. Come home, take the help while you have it, figure out what you want to do while you have a place to go so that you can set yourself up. That's what I did. So I got off the ship. I moved back to DC, or back to Maryland. I'll never forget, I took a job at a restaurant at the National Harbor, and I worked there for 2 weeks. And it was the worst restaurant I ever worked in my life. I'd been working in restaurants all through my 20s. I was almost 28 at this time.
was that like the only kind of work you could find at the time with the qualifications you had, or what was that about?
To some extent, I could have most definitely probably found an IT job in the area, but I really wanted to be, at that point, I called it a web developer, because I had been teaching myself how to code on the side for a while. I was on the cruise ship. I messed with it for a little bit. And it's what I really wanted to do. And I told myself, if I had uprooted my life from the relationship I was in and the period that I was in, I was going to at least do justice by that, by seeing through what I wanted. So I was like, I'll get a restaurant job, work part-time until I can figure out how to become a web developer.
That's 2 major gems you just dropped right there. Like from you saying how, what was it, Reggie? If I can work this hard for somebody else.
Yep.
I mean, that's huge. And then this whole thing right here with trying to make the sacrifices that you've made earlier in life not be for nothing. Like, it's a lot of, I can see a lot of mindset that you were able to like tap into, develop, and what have you, and just kind of get stuff done when you needed to get it done.
Shout out to your moms for extending that olive branch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure after a while she was like, all right, you got to figure this out. You need to get out of my house. But initially, mom was there for you.
So actually,
I was about to say, man, was it really an olive branch a time? You really on the clock, brother.
Like that. Some parents, I have a lot of friends whose parents told them at 18, you got to get out, figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed enough that neither one of my parents were like that. I mean, my dad's always been a little tough on me, and I lived with him for a short stint in my early 20s, but I was blessed where my mom never really told me to get out. She, it ties into the story, so I won't ruin this part, but I will get to my mom a little bit more in a bit.
Yeah, I don't think that's something that really comes from moms, though. Usually that's like the dads. But yeah, go ahead, bro.
It depends. So I worked at the restaurant for 2 weeks and I quit. I never even picked up my check. They still owe me a check to this day. This was almost 5 years ago.
Did anything happen, or did you just
It was just a horrible experience.
Okay.
It was one of the worst run restaurants I'd ever worked at. I'd been in food. I've done everything from washing dishes to like managing restaurants at this point throughout my 20s. Like the first time I worked in a restaurant, I was 19, and then I stopped working in restaurants at 26, 27. So I had a lot of experience through my 20s in them. So it's just like, I know what's right, I know what's wrong. And there was just a lot wrong. And again, I realized like I worked this hard on the ship. I know what I want to do. I'm not going to work for anybody until I'm doing what I want. And I had my own car. So I was like, I'm in DC. I'm just going to drive Lyft. So I started driving Lyft full time, like the Friday to Saturday to Sunday shift every night during the week. And then I would go to class at the community college. It was like 2 or 3 nights a week while I was figuring that out. And when I got about halfway done with the certification, it was like 3 semesters for the certification. It wasn't a lot to do for it. I was like, I don't really have enough. But it was really interesting because I'd be driving around DC and talking to all these different people and meeting people and getting different insight. And I met this one woman, and she was like, I was telling her what I was trying to do and what I'm going to community college. I'm trying to figure out how to get into web development. She's like, you should check out General Assembly. And I'm like, is that like some type of government funding project or something like that? Like you try to send me to something. She's like, no, it's a secondary school where they train people how to do software engineering. I ran a nonprofit for a while. We hired people from there quite often for software engineering, and they came on, did very good jobs.
And with a name like that, I would assume it's not just web development. Like that's because the name is like machine code.
Yeah, exactly. So they actually do. Their 3 main immersive cohorts are software engineering, immersive, data science, and then UI UX. And then they have like part-time courses. They also have like one-off classes and stuff like that. But it's all around like learning in the technology in a secondary space. And this woman just told me about it, and I started looking into it, and it all fell into place. It was interesting. I reached out to the school and I applied, and at the time, it was like $16,000-$17,000 for a 3-month cohort. And I was like, I can't get a loan for that. Like I have student debt, and
how much?
Pay for this. It was like $16,000
for 3 months.
For 3 months, but it's a full-time immersive boot camp for 3 months straight, 5 days a week, 9 to 5.
Is room and board included with that?
No.
No. Wow.
No room and board. It's just to show up and learn.
I mean, shoot, man, I've seen boot camps that do less. Yeah, but for more money.
I learned a lot, and I mean, worked out of there with. After teaching, I always tell my students, you know enough to know. You know enough to know you don't know anything, right? Like I always tell my students, you'll never know more than you don't know. So get over that, right? Like it's about what you do with the gaps.
A lot of people want to just go into a school without knowing anything. You at least prime yourself for months, so that when you got to the school and invested your money, you were polishing off a skill that you didn't, that you had already acquired and you had gotten, pretty intimately familiar with, so you don't want to put 5 figures into a situation, especially one that's timed that tight, and you paying somebody that much to teach you basics, which is pretty much like reading you a bedtime story, every day. You do that on your own so that now you've built up enough, curiosity about it, and you want to know some more high level things that you can't readily find yourself through your ignorance. So I definitely appreciate that, that very intentional way you did that.
I appreciate that. And that's what I tell anyone who always comes to me, because I get a lot of people who are interested in boot camps after they see like I was a student and I taught what's the process, how to do it. And I always say you shouldn't go to a boot camp or any type of secondary learning until you have questions about the material.
Facts.
Like when you're jumping into JavaScript and you're like, what's the difference between an object and a class? Like why am I instantiating something, or why is my development environment different here than it was there, right? Like at that point you can come in and have a conversation. Not everybody can do that, but like, yeah, I can teach you from zero to hero, but it is much better when you come in with some prerequisite knowledge. And I did that out of luck. I won't lie. Like it wasn't intentional going in, but I had so much time on my hands that I was trying to learn, and out of frustration was why I sought out other educational means, because college didn't work for me.
I'm gonna need half from kudos back since you didn't.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to take them back, but I am going to give you the kudos for the shout out though, right? Like, and I do want to reiterate it because I think as an educator, I think it's very important, and it's something that I try to tell my mentees and people who come to me with interest, especially in getting into quote tech, right? Everybody wants to get into tech because they see 6-figure salaries, and I'm like, well, if we're talking tech or IT, like networking, security, software, machine, like anybody can sell you the dream of saying, go get your security plus, and you're going to make this much money, or go to this boot camp and learn how to be a software engineer. But until you spark that interest and you know what the passion is and what area under the umbrella you want to be in, I think you're wasting your time by going to a traditional or a non-traditional educational route. And I don't think that's a lot of things people tell you on the surface.
Why is it? Would you entertain the formal educational route?
At my point in my career right now, I'm thinking about going to get my degree.
With like a
Like a
undergrad?
bachelor's. Yeah, like
Really?
going back and getting my undergrad, potentially even a master's. And it's not for a paycheck, but it's out of
Personal.
interest. Yeah,
Personal
it's
growth.
like there are some
get it.
things that I can most definitely teach myself, and I've taught myself a lot. But just like there's some levels of academia that it's good to learn from other people, and being in an environment where you're being scholastic with others it's fun. And
So it's not necessarily like the information more so than it is like the way that it builds you as a person, or
I would say
you
part of it
said
is
the
the information.
environment.
Part of it's the information, and part of it's the environment. There again, like I'm starting to run into some questions, especially around like I'm getting really interested in just like data science in general, and like some of your more niche theory, like behind the way systems are designed, behind the way languages are built, in the sense of like coding languages or models are built. There are some questions that I would really love to dive into. And I have some friends who are like going for their PhDs, and I hear them talk about some of the stuff. And I'm like, ooh, like that sounds fun. Like I would love to learn that stuff from a professor who's been doing this for X amount of years.
Got it.
And that's why I personally am thinking about a collegiate level. It would be the only time that I would recommend it for myself or anyone that I know well enough that I can identify with, because I have thousands of dollars of student debt for 2 degrees that I tried to get that I wouldn't be using today if I finished. And like in the boot camp space, I've taught plenty of people with bachelor's and master's. My best friend who I met at the boot camp had a master's in psychology and worked in that field for a while, and now makes more money as a software engineer than she ever did in she was like counseling and things like that.
What were those degrees that you say you wouldn't be using?
Well, my first degree was a liberal arts degree. I went for photography my first year in college because my parents always told me you got to go to college. So my cousin went to the Art Institute in Philadelphia, and I never went on a college visit, didn't even take the SATs, but they wanted me to go to college. So I found a college. So I went for photography, even though I'd never picked up a camera before in my life.
What?
So that was $20,000 worth of partying. I did a year there, had more fun than I did studying. And then I moved to Florida with my dad. And then my next degree I tried to do was another boutique college, one of those private for-profit schools. And that one was in some type of computers. It was like computer forensics. It was like a bachelor's of science with like a focus in computer forensics. But like there was so much undergrad work that I had to do that I just wasn't interested enough. And I was like 20, 19, 20 at the time. So that was another couple $20,000 or so, and just didn't work for me because I wasn't ready yet. And most definitely not like here in my heart either, So like maybe the computer forensics I might have been using now, possibly, but most definitely not the art degree.
So it kind of sounds like you will always, you looking back on it, you probably would have hit some facet of tech, whether it be the computer forensics or the web, but something just got your attention with web development along the way.
Yeah.
Because I'm surprised you didn't like double back to the forensic thing since you already had that behind you, like in your past.
I've thought about it, but there's just certain parts of where you can take that work that just doesn't sit well with me,
Gotcha.
and how it's utilized in the workplace. I'll just put it like that. Long and short, I don't think I would want to go into law enforcement, and that's mostly where you would utilize it, from what I saw.
Yeah, it doesn't really sound too exciting.
I mean, it's kind of cool, but then like I had a buddy who worked for a couple different law enforcements, and like a lot of the cyber guys and computer guys, you're pulling the stuff you got to look at, your subpoenas, pulling people's computers out of the house for crime, pictures of stuff you don't want to see, stuff like that, and then having to testify for all that kind of stuff. Like that's what like the computer forensics is really used for.
Right. Some people just have this comfortable and they just feel at home in academia, right? And it sounds like you kind of have like this this thirst for knowledge within academia. Because a lot of times we talked on this show in the past about not necessarily having to have a degree, right? Just if you're smart and you can do the job, doesn't always a degree is not always required. But so I'm curious to know, based on the fact that you're going to get this degree, what kind of different areas in IT do you think you would want to go? Because to be technical and to be sitting at a desk doing this kind of, system engineering, stuff like that, a degree is good, but you don't really need it. So what kind of jobs do you think you'd be looking for after you get a degree?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you with a hard question.
No, you didn't. You didn't. I'm trying to make sure I don't know if I'm employable anymore. So like the part of my story that I haven't gotten to is that I own my own business now. And I work for myself full time. And I always joke with like my friends, and it's like, I don't know if business wrapped up and failed, I don't know if I could work a 9 to 5 anymore. So like the degree is not for work in any way, shape, or form at this point. The degree is just because I'm a nerd. And like,
I was about to say that because like one of the first things you said when you were going to that was, I'm not doing it for the money. And that right there says like, yeah, he just wanting that experience and that the environment and that information, right? You want to get to that information. It's just so much easier to get when you're on that side of the playing field. Yeah,
because I'm at the point now in my career where like if I had to get a job tomorrow, I would just go for an engineering job. I could get a senior engineer position at this point, I think, without a problem. Could most definitely do a director level position with what I've done with my business and other companies, and could make well over 6 figures and be okay. So I'm lucky enough that I would say, and I've worked hard enough to say that I'm in the position where I have the network, which is very important for the job hunt that I don't think a lot of people like to talk about. And also the experience that I would feel confident going back into the traditional workspace without the degree.
Got it. And
really the master's and the potential PhD that I've tickled around with my mind in would just be for kicks.
Just to clear it up for anybody that might have like heard us like speaking about this like in the past, like when I advise people to not go college and towards the degrees, it's very much rooted in your purpose. Like, what are you looking to get out of it? And a lot of the people that are talking to me about it, they're trying to get into tech, so they're trying to get positioning in tech, and you get more bang for your buck with the certification than you would with a 4-year degree. But if you're like trying to make a pivot in your career, that could be a reason why you go towards a degree, so you can get some of that business aspect that Ray Moore talked about in episode 2, or if you're just going for because you have a sheer thirst for knowledge and you want to get that knowledge that you get from that formal theory from a professor.
Well, I just want to make a quick observation based on just watching you guys on camera. You guys are making my hairline look really bad. I mean, I'm looking at him, I'm looking at Rico, and I'm looking at my hairline right now, and I'm looking really suspect, and I don't want to be on camera much longer. So I'm like, wow. I'm like, what's going on right now?
I mean, you want me to like Photoshop it? I can do the AI to like.
I'm just like
polish it. I give you a haircut like Roger. Y'all can have.
I think it's the lighting or something. I got the camera on top of my monitor now, as opposed to what I had at eye level. And man, the shine down is crazy. I'm looking like LeBron over here, man.
I don't think anybody was looking at it until you pointed it.
I didn't even know if you...
Nah, I can't stop looking at it.
Now I'm looking.
Hey, it's like what?
You mentioned it.
Dude, it's crazy, man. Yeah, I know. I'm looking at it like, man, what is happening right now?
Now we looking at it.
Yeah, I know. I know, man. I know, dude.
I think we're gonna be all right, brother.
It's gonna be cool.
Anyway, but back to serious note. I think the thing, but are you looking to get back into teaching? Because it sounds like you did some teaching at one point. A professorship sounds pretty dope, right? For somebody like yourself.
I would need the degree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you would need
to go collegiate. I mean,
you would need a master's level to teach undergrad, and you need a PhD to teach masters.
Yeah.
degree, right?
So that's most definitely something like I like retirement, I think, just for like, like adjunct or, I don't know if I want to get tenure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like
I can see it talking to you. I can see it talking to you.
My mom always told me I should be teaching in computers, and she was right. So it's not something I'm actively pursuing at the moment because there's other things that I'm trying to run a business, trying to make a business successful, and other ventures that I'm working on. But it is definitely something that's in the wings that I plan on striving for more. Excuse me. So, but yeah, there is a part of if it's okay, if I'd like to backtrack, I'd like to finish one last thing about the past and then bring it full circle to like what I'm kind of doing now, if that's okay.
That's
awesome.
perfectly fine, bro.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
So General Assembly was awesome. Running into that, when I applied, I couldn't afford it. And I feel things fall in line for a reason. And when I was talking to them, they're like, Roger, you seem like a great candidate. We have a scholarship program called the Opportunity Scholarship. Try applying. And I ended up getting a full ride through the program. Which to me was just, at this point I've been driving Lyft for probably almost 4 months. And like, this was just like, I'm doing the right thing, like
that's
going
crazy
into it.
Though, how you ended up getting that scholarship. That's
it
a lot of money.
It was. And because I really wanted to do the program. Like I went in, you had to go and do an interview in person. You had to see the campus, talk to an admissions person, have a conversation with them, and like everything checked out. I had to do like a pre-assessment test. I passed the pre-assessment test. And then like we got to the money part and I called, they're like, can you try to apply for the loan? I'm like, I can try to apply, but my credit's crap, and
so just curious, like what would you have done like if you hadn't gotten the scholarship?
Question.
Would you just gonna like make it work, or
yeah,
I mean,
I was gonna just keep doing what I was doing. Like I was already taking I was midway through the certification. I was planning on finish that. The funny part was I was teaching my instructor stuff at the certification. So like my plan was just to keep going. Like I had a goal. Like I don't want to be sitting in my car driving Lyft forever. Like cutting off the app when I get on certain sides of town and my legs are getting sore because I'm sitting on my butt all day driving this car and I'm beating my car up and making just enough to get it. So I was going to figure it out. I didn't know what else I was going to do.
I want to attend the class, but the way my checking and my savings work.
Yeah, like that's exactly what I'm like. I'm driving Lyft, barely making, $90, maybe $100 on an 8-hour, 9-hour, 12-hour shift. Like I can't afford, and at that time they didn't have like the deferment payments that they do now with a lot of those programs, which I also caution people to be wary of if you don't know if it's what you want to do. But like, it worked out, and like the woman that I was interviewing with at the school, she saw my passion and it was a reserved amount of funding that they had for these. So they didn't give it to everybody. She's like, Roger, I think you're a prime applicant and I really think you should apply and I'll go to bat for you with the board. And I submitted my, you had to write an essay and like why you wanted to attend and why it mattered. And I was selected. And to me, it was just like, looking back almost a year before when I'm leaving my relationship of almost 10 years and leaving the life I knew and moving halfway across the world to work on a cruise ship, to moving home with my mom, to having the first birthday at home with my mom in my baby sister's room where the walls are pink and blue from when she was a kid, and like what am I doing at 27? I was basically a married man and now I'm living at home with my mama and I'm 3 years away from 30.
Jeez.
And like fast forward 4 months later and someone sees something in me and awards me the opportunity to do a program, an intensive program that could potentially change my life. So, excuse my friends, but I sure as hell wasn't going to fucking miss the opportunity. I had shaken a lot of sticks since then and missed a lot. I had a lot, opportunity only knocks a few times. So to answer your question directly, I don't know what I would have done. But I don't think that was an option at that point. I think that's why
you was
it
committed
worked out the way. Yeah,
he was already in it.
I hadn't. Go ahead.
That's when the game. That's when the game was like just the tip. Like that's what that is right there. We ain't had nothing. I'm editing that out. Don't worry.
Sometimes you just don't ask questions.
And sometimes when you're back against the wall, man, and you like looking at your life, like I gotta do something.
Oh,
That's when that real. And I just want to.
I like that.
Okay, I just entered into a dance hall right now. Why are you about to? Anyway, so Rico talks about it. I talk about it, but that passion for IT that has to be there, and it has to shine through, and it looked like it shined through in that interview, and that's what got you that job, I think.
Yeah.
The passion for sure. Go ahead, Rico.
So fast forward that, you already know I graduated. I got my first job. I went to that first job. I started teaching at General Assembly. I did that for a year. The pandemic hit. Like, I was in class. I remember like people were getting sick and China. I'm like, they're gonna shut down the world. And like my boss was like, no, they're not. So like we switched from from on-prem to virtual. And I was working, and then George Floyd was murdered. And long and short of it, that sparked a lot of feelings in everybody. And a little bit after he was murdered, a company reached out to me by the name of Code Differently. And if you don't know them, I must most definitely plug. They do great work. I would highly recommend you checking them out. They're based out of Delaware, and they are all about developing a pipeline of Black and brown talent to tech.
And what was that name again?
Code Differently.
Code Differently. All right, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. One of the founders reached out to me, and they teach. So they work with college level students, and they also work with high school and middle school level students with developing learning and pipelines for them to get them into jobs. And one of the owners, Stephanie, of the company, found me on LinkedIn and asked me to come and work for them, wanted to interview for a position to do some teaching and educating. That turned, I got hired on for there. Which was a great opportunity. I ended up becoming the director of their youth development shop during COVID. Ran a development shop of 30 students, high school students that would go to school in the morning virtually, and then they came to my dev shop in the afternoon, and we were teaching them how to code, getting them ready for like summer internships that we were trying to get with like JP Morgan. And then while also running that program, I ran. We do a lot of grant funding. We get a lot of grant funding, and we got a grant to do a program we call 1,000 Kids Coding, where we were, where I helped to recruit and then teach about 750 kids from third grade up to 12th grade. It was a 2-week long learning boot camp where we taught them how to code HTML, CSS websites virtually. And I read this dev shop. I was there around 9 months. And right towards the end of my tenure with them, never forget it. I was logging into I was running it was a gaming dev shop. We partnered with this gaming studio that was helping kids learn how to like play games like professionally. And we were teaching them how to like build games in some like low code, no code platforms. And I was logging in for a class, and my mom had just gotten a knee surgery, and she was home, and my sister was taking her to the bathroom, and she became unresponsive. And long and short of it, she died.
I'm sorry for your loss, man. That's tough, man. You with your mom.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I only bring it up because it's a really important part of my story and where I am right now. So, as I said earlier, my mom told me, take the help while you have it. And when she died, it was about 2 years, almost 2 years after I had finished General Assembly. And it was the first time in my life I remember speaking at my mother's wake, and I was all right. Like, I wasn't okay because my mama had died, but I was making $90,000 a year, full benefits. Didn't really have a thing like trajectory wise. I was on track.
You was in a good position. Like, you were comfortable, right?
I was comfortable. Like, I was figuring out, okay, I can buy a house in a year. I don't have to live with my mom much longer. I'm helping her out with rent. I'm helping her out with stuff. My credit's coming back. I'm paying off debt.
And that's the hard part that I try to like explain to people and get people to visualize, because when they dream of like the internet stuff, Bentley and, all the stuff that, all the celebrities are doing and driving and, places they're going, but they don't see like the first set of, the first bag of gold that you get along the journey. You'll get certain milestones And you can't discount the first one because it's not as glamorous as the last one. You know, you take your wins and you celebrate all of them because they all wins, even if they're smaller wins.
Yep.
So I feel like, we live in that IG world, right? There's I have this, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, right? I have this poster in my office where it's like an iceberg, right? And then at the top of the iceberg, the part you can see is success. Mm-hmm. And then hard work, persistence, late nights, all those words are underneath it. Yeah. See, everybody wants the iceberg at the top. They don't want to see all the stuff underneath. You start from somewhere, and everybody's got a story. And hearing stories like this is what motivates people to lean forward and be like, you know what? I don't have this now, but if I have my vision board and I focus on it, I can get there.
Yeah, like with you losing your mom and everything you had on your plate at the time, I was kind of curious as to like in that moment, did that derail you or did it get you hyper focused? Because of the fact that that's something that your mom, like she really laced you up so you didn't trip up in life. And it helped, it seemed like it helped a lot.
Listen, that's, first and foremost, it broke me. I mean, my mom, God rest her soul. My mom was the nicest person you could ever meet. And I don't just say that because she was my mama. Just like everybody you brought into the house, she became their mom. She was that type of person. Like my mom helped pay for other people to get cars because they needed help type of thing. Wow. So when my mom died, it's the most traumatic thing I've ever gone through in my life. And because it was my mom went for a knee surgery on a Monday and she was dead in front of me on a Wednesday. The following Wednesday. I carried my mom's body out on the stretcher trying to fight for her type of situation. It shattered me to every extent of word.
I'll tell you time, man.
It hit in more ways than I even realized. But again, it's interesting when one thing I always tell my mentees is passion matters. And when you're chasing your passion, at least for me, from my experience, things tend to work. And it was interesting enough, right a little bit before my mom passed, a company reached out to me, To You. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they work with like a lot of colleges and help them bring a lot of their curriculum online. And they actually bought edX recently also. They reached out to me because they were working with Amazon to put together a course for them. And they needed curriculum writers contractually. And they reached out. And while I was working at Code Differently, I was tossing around the idea of potentially taking on the contract. I wasn't sure. I was working full time. I was really committed in what I was doing. And then my mom died. And I started therapy recently, like very quickly after my mom passed. And I remember talking it out with my therapist. I was negotiating with them. It was a bit of an interview process and stuff like that. But they ended up offering me the position as a contractor. And
wow. That was your first ticket through your own.
Yeah. They were offering me 8 G's a month for 20 hours a week worth of work for 6 months worth of a contract. And I remember trying to figure out writing curriculum. And I remember trying to figure out, sitting and talking to my therapist. I'm like, I've got this job. I've got benefits. I'm making $90K a year plus $5,000 bonus as long as I hit all my objectives. And now I've got this. But I was shattered. I could barely find my head from my behind. And my therapist, was like, what's wrong with taking 6 months on this contract and then seeing what you got to do afterwards? You've got a little bit of savings. This is going to be paying you well. Try it. So I did. And it worked out. And then that contract, so I left Code Differently, reluctantly to a certain extent, but I needed the time for my mental health. And I was lucky and blessed enough that I had the opportunity come along that I could.
And since you said that, I do want to point out that June is Men's Mental Health Month.
Yeah. And the mental health is important. And most definitely in our community, I don't think we talk about it enough. And therapy was one of the best things that I ever did for myself. And just being aware of my mental state and giving myself, the one thing I learned from my therapist was giving myself the grace to be a whole human being and realizing that you don't have to hold everything at once. And, I always want to say when I get better, and my therapist would always ask me, well, what is better? What is good? What is perfect? And like setting these unrealistic expectations around what you think things should be rather than what you need in the moment. So it's important. It's important. And I encourage, I stay in therapy on a regular basis, even when my mom was not dying. You know what I mean? Like that was almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years ago next month, but I still go to therapy at least a couple times a year at this point.
Like getting your oil checked on your vehicle.
Yeah, mental. You should be going to the doctor, regular doctor, once a year. It should be, as my brother said, you got to keep the meat suit safe, but you got to keep the brain too.
Right.
That's the thing that keeps us all ticking. I was hard pressed. My dad, and my girlfriend were the ones who pushed me into therapy after my mom died because I was not okay. I was not all right in any way, shape, or form of the words. I remember the day after I woke up that morning and I just screamed. My dad was at the house. He slept. He flew up from Florida. My girlfriend was in the room with me. I woke up that morning. I screamed for 45 minutes straight, top of my lungs like a baby. Like that was, I was, so like, yeah, like it's important. All I'm trying to get at is mental health is important. And especially in the Black community, for anyone and everyone, and Black men especially, we need to do a better job of taking care of our own mental health. And more importantly, we need to do a better job of taking care of each other's mental health and calling it out when we see it. And I don't mean call it out like, bro, you crazy. I mean, calling it out like, look, you don't seem like you're okay and you can speak to me, but there's also professional help that can help even more.
That is very important. That's more important than the tech stuff. I mean, what's the use in being a lucrative, career in tech if you don't even your mental capacity is not intact?
Yeah, but yeah. So mom died, took the job with Amazon. It's crazy how stuff worked out too, because then after the Amazon position, I get another call. The year prior, I had a school called Launch Code reach out to me. They were spinning up a program. Same time I was interviewing for Code Differently, Launch Code had reached out to me. They were getting ready to teach for the first year of boot camp with Microsoft to train transitioning veterans with top secret clearances. And I shut them down. I not shut them down, but I was like, I need something with a little bit more stability. I have another offer. It's a full-time offer with benefits. And at that time they were offering me, contractor position. There was no guarantee that there was going to be another course. But then after the Amazon contract ended, they reached back out and they're like, hey, we have another contract. It's for 6 months. I'm like, okay, well, I didn't have any other prospects on the list yet. So I took that. I ended up teaching 40 veterans. They all ended up working at Microsoft. They all had top secret clearances from various different branches to go work for Microsoft on their cleared side. Because Microsoft at that time was gunning for the Jedi contract. And they still have a bunch of, they're moving a lot of the DODs, moving a lot of their stuff over to Azure and AWS.
So you were teaching cloud. How did you end up learning cloud? Your background's in development.
I picked it up.
You just picked it up?
I picked it up. Because I told them that when they brought me on, it was like the course. So the course was C#, building APIs with C#. Yeah, pretty much. It was
really
C#.
That's how you picked it up, ready? Just like that? Okay.
True. All right.
I was honest up front. I'm like, look, I don't know C#. I can learn it. I've taught JavaScript. I know Python at this point. I know JavaScript. I know full stack development. I know, and Flask and all that kind of, not Flask, sorry. Yeah, and Flask and Node. I've done Mongo backend, like Mongoose and SQL. I'm like, I know the REST API architecture, right? Like I can build a full stack application in these other languages. I just have to pick up C# before I teach it. And they're like, that's cool. Like we have a full curriculum maxed out. We were really interested in you last year. It was really hurtful when you told us no. The course went well. We just really want you to come in this year. And I was like, all right, cool. I have this contract ending. Did the timelines work? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. So I came in. I had 4 TAs underneath me. It was my show. And I was the lead instructor. We taught C#, MVC, which I did not care for, but we taught MVC, architecture for building backends. We then taught Azure for deployments, running VMs on Azure, and then also handling our backend API deployments. And then I mixed in some React for the students, also taught them Python and then data structures and algorithms. And the point of the course was for them to then come in and be site reliability engineers and or software engineers, depending on how they tested out. And it was a 5-month full-time cohort for them. I had, like I said, 40 students, and we had a 100% graduation rate. 39 of them placed at Microsoft, and the one who didn't place was because he got another job offering and didn't want it anyways.
Wow.
So
is that a program that's still out and around, or?
So they did that one, and then so this was like 2021 when I did that. So it's a program that's kind of on hold because towards the middle of 2021 was when Microsoft did a major shuffle internally. They moved a lot of departments around, and funding got cut to different programs because people weren't in certain shoes anymore or places anymore. So they're not doing the program anymore. This is part of how my company Gemstack got started, because when we finished that cohort, they wanted to do a more boutique course, because the students who came out of it, they were generalists, but they wanted them more focused on like more hardened technology. So we actually bidded for a contract to develop, and even my company Gemstack directly to develop a more in-depth curriculum. But then the shuffle happened and red tape and all that kind of stuff. So as it stands right now, I don't know if Microsoft is still doing that. I do know that they have some internal efforts, and they do a lot of outreach for veterans. So like it's most definitely something to look at if any veteran is interested in Microsoft. Just like looking.
How did the later programs you developed, how did that contrast to what you were doing previously?
It was going to be a further, so more cloud was going to be in that one. It was a more well-rounded web dev side too. So we were looking more at like React being in the curriculum, basically like React front end, C# back end, then with like a pretty strong cloud architect back end or architect background. So understanding deployments in a more standing up CI/CD pipelines, how are we doing regression testing, things like that, giving them like the full scope so then they could make the decision of, do I want to come in and be doing front end, back end, DevOps, or a mix of full stack, was kind of how we were looking at developing the curriculum. So we offered them here's a core curriculum, and then like, here are some ideas from some like potential self-paced learnings that we wanted to then offer, because they wanted kind of like a plate to kind of choose from, is what that was going to look like.
Gotcha.
And then off the heels of that, I had a buddy while I was teaching that cohort reach out. He had a student from General Assembly who then worked for the Algorand. Algorand was a blockchain, the Algorand Inc. here in the States, and they were looking for help with training for engineers. And long and short of it, I ended up getting awarded a grant from the Algorand Foundation to develop a full Web 2 to Web 3 development course last year to teach Web 2 engineers how to develop on the Algorand blockchain. And that course is actually published. And they funded the whole thing, which was a sizable contract that took up most of the work last year, along with then also working for Chegg under my company for subject matter expert work, which we still do some now. So we do like videos for them and write curriculum from time to time for them. So like, kind of like from my mom passing, transitioned from like trying to work as a software engineer to now owning my own ed tech company where we do various different educational development types of contracts.
Gotcha. Wow. And with the Web3, how'd you end up getting into that? I mean, was it like the AWS skill set? You just picked it up so you can teach it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we told them that going in, like we had the gentleman who was a student of one of my friends, he was one of my colleagues at General Assembly. He reached out and said, "Hey, I work for this blockchain. We're looking for help developing a course. Do you know anyone who could help?" He called one of the guys I used to teach with. He called me. We all got together. We started pitching the contract. They ended up having to back out of the contract because of other engagements that they were going on, and it took a while to land the deal. So I ended up getting it by myself, and we padded it enough time to be able to learn what we needed to learn and made it happen. I hired one of the guys who I taught with, and we learned Web3. We learned how
does that happen? Like, are you guys just like grabbing some books on Web3, or I mean,
scoured the internet? Scoured the internet, watched all the tutorials we could watch, read as much as we could read, chatted as much as we could chat between him and I.
YouTube videos.
YouTube. Yeah, we taught ourselves YouTube videos, Udemy courses, their documentation, building a small piece, then building another piece, and then, okay, so here's what we learned. How would we want to teach this to ourselves? You know, like, okay,
So if
let's
you're out
start
there
off with the
like
syllabus.
pressed because you're having a hard time trying to learn something by yourself, imagine trying to learn something to teach it. Like,
Actually, that's one of the best ways I recommend to learn.
really,
I always tell you don't know anything until you can explain it to a 5-year-old. And I forget who said that quote, but until you know something well enough to explain it to a layman, you don't understand it.
I always try to press myself to be able to like break something down with some analogy. If I can analogize it to something that's non-technical, and people say, "Oh, okay, I see now." Okay, now I know what I'm talking about. Now I really know that technology. That's a good point.
I always make my students in class teach each other. Before, like whenever you're in my class, before you can come to me with a question, you need to have asked someone else, and they need to either try to explain it to you or you've tried to explain it to them. Then you can come ask me a question.
That's smart. Gems on gems. Pick this stuff up, man. If y'all out there and you're having a hard time with anything, make it your challenge to teach that to somebody else that doesn't know it.
Yeah, so that was Einstein, by the way.
Was it? Okay.
I mean, one of my favorite things from Einstein that I use, it's actually in my email header, is try not to be a man of value, but rather try not to be a person of success, but rather be of value. Ooh. That's one of my favorite quotes from Einstein. I like that. So it's funny. I mean, and you don't have to say it, right? Because I know this happens. They be like, so they teaching the course, they saying something, and then they be like, "Is that right, sir?" And you be like, "Sure, that sounds about right." Because I know I've taught some courses. I'll be like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Yep, that's about right. Got it. Good job, man. Good job. I'm proud of you.